How's it going, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Dyson Sphere Program. Hope you guys have been enjoying the series so far. If you guys have, you guys know what to do. Smash that like button if you haven't already. Consider subscribing, as it does help out the channel. And if you have any questions, comments, or concerns for me, leave those down below, and let's get into today's episode. So, in the last couple episodes, we've been trying to slowly get research restarted, or at the very least, somewhat haphazardly put back together. Just so we can explore some more, well, I guess the remaining star systems. I think we are on the last or second to last space exploration tech, which will allow us to be able to scan the nearby star systems, just mainly because I'm curious to see what else is there, and B, just to see what, kind of what we're missing and what else we could use. And so on our endeavor to do that, we have kind of run into a bit of a roadblock, because we've basically made all the basic materials with a few that I just haven't gotten to yet, mainly because I just haven't gotten to them. But that means we're now moving on to the intermediate, or what I would consider the more intermediate materials we need to start making. So things that require no raw resource, but things that only require intermediates themselves. Now, I think we've already made one or two things that have technically fit that category, but I feel like now we're really starting to get into them, which is fine. But the only downside is now that we need all or I don't want to say all intermediate products, but now that we're only needing refined products, that also means we need to start overhauling the chemical area. So I think today's episode is going to focus on us tackling just that. But as we all know, we're going to need to clear some space. So we're going to be doing a lot of chem dem reno today, or just a lot of demo. Now the problem with all these chemicals and liquid, I don't know if I'll call it chemicals or liquid land, but it's a pain because the liquids don't stack the same as solids, and so I can only move 20 at a time per stack, and then at most 1 to 2 lines in my inventory. I don't know, it's absurd how much you have to just move back and forth with liquid. And sure, I guess I could just delete all the stuff that falls on the ground and say screw it, whatever, we'll get more resources. And I'm sure some or a lot of you probably do just that when you're renovating your base. You probably go, whatever, I don't need all these little micro amounts of whatever that are insignificant in the grand scheme of things. And you know, I'm sure I'm probably just wasting time with that, but I don't know. Every time I've ever played a game that had stuff, I found all that stuff as valuable stuff. I don't want to get rid of any of my stuff. I think that's mainly true for games that allow you to pick things up. So like in Fallout, I would always pick shit up, especially before. Like in Fallout 4, it made sense with the junk system and getting scrap and getting resources, because then it was like, okay, you actually need this stuff, right? But like in previous Fallouts, so like Fallout 3 or Fallout New Vegas, I don't think you could pick up as much, but there was still some stuff you could pick up, but you couldn't actually use for anything. And if it looked cool, I would take it, and it would live in my inventory rent-free forever. Eventually I ran out of space, and then had to drop it because I needed an actual useful thing. But luckily in this, I'm going to use all these things. Sure, they might not be now, they might not be soon, but at some point I will use them, and I'm going to want every little bit that I can find and get my hands on. And I'm sure there's some of you out there who are the exact same way. So the problem now that I'm kind of running into is I have to figure out, okay, well, how much space do I need? And before I can even begin to tackle that, I have to figure out, okay, well, how much space am I working with? The problem that I've noticed is, while we have this crude oil right there, kind of smack dab in the middle, and I can't really move further north because there's all those oil wells. And then I also have to figure out, okay, do I really want to use the refined oil kind of recycler thing, if you will. So the current setup I have is we put refined oil, hydrogen, coal in, and we get more refined oil out than we put in. Now, it's great in that, well, refined oil just keeps replacing itself. However, we need a lot more because we need more than we produce so that we have enough to skim off the top, which then in of itself causes us to need to produce even more. So it's definitely a massive undertaking, but if all we have to do is feed it coal and hydrogen, I'd be okay with that. So right now the reason I'm kind of just standing around so much is because I was tabbed out and figuring it all out on my other monitor and checking out calculations. There were a lot of moments in this episode of me just kind of having to figure out calculations for things. Because as much as some of the spreadsheet sites and other spreadsheets that are out there, and even some of my own custom spreadsheets I have set up for this, it's still quite lengthy. There were times where I was having to do math on the fly, so I was checking, okay, well, how much oil am I producing per day or per tick? And so I had to figure out that, because just like in Factorio, the oil wells do slowly diminish in how much they produce per second. And so I found I would need, I believe, 210 oil per second to sustain enough oil input, basically, for the system. And I was like, okay, well, that seems like a lot. Well, how much would it be if I went the other way? It was basically double. If I went with hydrogen, coal, and I think it was X-ray cracking is what it's called, it would have cost me double the input. Or not double the input, double the machines. So the more I contemplated it, I was like, so I'm basically having to either have a massive area dedicated to this or have a massive supply network dedicated to it. And I'd rather have the supply network because that's kind of cool. Now, I'm sure that's probably going to cause some lag and more things. So there might be some justification for doing one over the other. I don't know which one's more efficient to do. Is making the refined oil just from oil itself better than doing the X-ray cracking or whatever it's called to do the hydrogen refined oil in coal to just make more refined oil? I don't know. I feel like that the latter is just more stuff. So I ended up kind of making an executive decision and deciding, you know what? Let's just go with the former. Let's just go ahead and drill for oil, ship the oil back, and then go that way. Because I would also have to figure out the hydrogen situation. So coal we can get pretty much, not infinitely, but quite a lot. So like whatever, we'll just do that. Hydrogen, sure, we could get unlimited from the ice giant, especially the one right next to our home base here. But I figured, we already have quite a few. I haven't actually been placing anymore since we placed the original handful, so we probably could fit quite a number more. I'm not sure how many I would need for that, but I figured just the sheer blueprint size, because as you can see, we only had like 120 right there, so we would need about 8 more, well, probably about 7 more rows of that blueprint. And I'm like, I don't think we have the space for it. Even though a large chunk of the planet we're not using, I just don't really feel comfortable considering that much space towards that singular build. At least right now, while I'm such a novice and still kind of learning the game, as many novices do. But so I figured, let's just go with the oil refining, and then we'll adjust from there. But in the meantime, before we can even do all that, let's kind of continue to progress on some of the other things. I do want to get my crafting queue queued up because, as I always say, if you have a replicator, if you have a inventory crafting, get it crafting, get things queued up, because it does take time and you might as well use it, right? Because if you're not crafting something, you're basically wasting crafting hammers or crafting value. And not that I speed run things, but I do find it wasteful to not be using it, because it's effectively as if an assembler isn't always working. Now, it is a bit of hypocrisy, because as you can see, I have all these assemblers that aren't doing anything, and I might as well just tear them up. But yeah, I just haven't gotten around to tearing them up yet. I haven't needed the space, and that's kind of the big caveat for me right now, is do I want to expand? Do I want to use up any sort of energy, both in-game and physically, to go over there, dismantle those things, to clear space for something that I'm currently not needing that space for? I don't really want to, so they're going to stay there until I get around to it, basically. We also have to consider what the next chemical things we want to get going are. So in order to get yellow science continued, we need the titanium crystals and we need diamonds. Well, diamonds are fairly easy, that's just graphite, or we can mine them. I haven't found any mineable deposits, so that means we're going to default to the graphite, but we did already include that in all of our calculations for crafting, and we should have plenty of graphite, assuming we have plenty of coal, and again, for now, we have plenty of coal. As for the titanium crystals, those are going to be a bit harder, mainly because, no pun intended, of being harder, is we just have to, again, we have to figure out an area we have to set up for those things, and then, of course, set up all of the inputs. And here we have one of those calculation pauses that I was talking about, and we'll see a couple of them, but it's really just going through and making sure that I have enough stuff crafted. And I was just trying to figure out the math, because I figured, oh, you know what, we can make the tier 2 chemical plants. Let's do it. It's going to cut half. It's only going to use half the space. And so why not? We have the materials to make it. Some of the machines that have a tier 2, I don't have the resource to make that tier 2, because it's a mineable resource that I don't have either discovered or I haven't gone out and got myself. Now, it is important to note, though, as you go through this, I definitely would recommend building a kind of an infrastructure shopping mall. I continue to say this probably at least once every episode and make some note of it, but I highly recommend doing it, because I have learned that this is definitely a game, just like Factorio and Satisfactory, that you're going to want that scalability with your infrastructure, and if you're having to wait on it, you have a lot of pauses like this where you just kind of stand around twiddling your thumbs. I mean, luckily for me, I'm kind of in between complete overhaul of the factory and just a somewhat productive state right now in the game. Then I was also considering if we should put plastic and stuff on that kind of left side of sulfuric acid, and I said, you know what, now we're gonna put it here right next to the graphene sheets. The reason I put it here instead of tearing up the graphene sheets is because the graphene sheets run right over that oil well. And sure, I suppose I could run the plastic right over it as well, huh? But for now, I'm going to leave just a bit of space. And I figured it's fine. The graphene sheets will have to be tore up just because of how few I have currently placed. I'm going to need more. And so that whole system will end up getting moved at some point in the future, probably next episode. And then, of course, I do want to try to get the spacing correct, because that is one thing that does bother me in a game, is when spacing is off. I don't really care that, like, oh no, one side isn't spaced properly, but it's annoying when you're trying to get things to fit together. So it's less from an OCD standpoint, which I do try to be OCD friendly for people, but as I have probably blatantly violated the OCD rules of keeping everything nice and neat many, many times. My my willingness to compromise with getting something done fast and it looking good meter usually results in things getting done, never changing, and probably looking squirrely as shit for a very long time until it eventually becomes no longer maintainable, and then I just go ahead and change it out. But I do want the spacing to be somewhat appropriate, mainly for how I have things laid out as a grid, because it does make things look nice, and it also does serve a purpose, so it's not just form, but also function. Mainly it's just for the power poles and then the inserters, because I do want those to line up as best as possible. Uh, thought I was gonna sneeze. Oh, that is the worst. I hate when I have just, I don't know, a tickle in my nose, and then it feels like I'm gonna sneeze, and then I don't, and then out of the blue, I'll be in the middle of the game, I'll be doing something, and then just there, it just sneeze uncontrollably. Or the worst is if you're carrying something and you can't use your hands to like maneuver enough to be able to sneeze into your arm, or like sneeze into your shirt, or sneeze like into a tissue or something. You just sneeze, and then it feels very gross because just everything goes everywhere. That is the worst. But alas, I am allergic to my two cats, which I I don't know. I feel like being allergic to cats. I think I'm also allergic to dogs. I'm pretty sure I'm also allergic to dogs because I remember when I was younger, I also sneezed when I was around pretty much anything that had fur and four legs. It's not as bad as it was. That's for sure. I remember having to take Benadryl constantly. I mean, I think that was before they had all these allergy pills and stuff. Although I'm sure they had them, but like Benadryl, I think was just like the thing everybody had. And unfortunately, we did have to go ahead and tear down all our beautiful work from a couple episodes ago of building out that massive oil thing and slowly progressing towards it. Because again, I just decided, you know what? I don't think that second recipe is worth it. The amount of machines that we're going to need and the amount of space we're going to need to eat up, I don't think is worth it in my mind. I'd much rather just mine the oil, refine it into the refined oil. We'll get some hydrogen, we can burn off extra hydrogen. I'd rather do it that way than having to worry about coal and also just the input of hydrogen. I'd rather only have one input I have to worry about rather than two inputs that I have to constantly try to maintain. Um, Plus, because then I think it's just going to stretch our supply lines more. Because eventually we could technically get to the point where we have enough oil derricks to where we won't need any new ones, because I believe there is a floor to how much of an oil well will reduce to. And so technically once we had enough that hit that floor, we should be fine and have enough of an adequacy. But yeah, anyway, pretty much I think that's really where we're at right now. It's just a lot of demo in today's episode. It's definitely a sneak peek at what I've been working on and continue to work on. There's just a lot of the demolition and a lot of back and forth. So today's episode is going to be a bit shorter than usual, mainly because of that. Even sped up, there is still just a lot of tedious teardown that's going on right now. And there probably will be for you guys, not that long. Just the next episode will actually start laying down the foundations of a lot of these things. However, for me, it was several hours. which does kind of suck. But, you know, we're getting there. I'm still having fun playing through it, which is good. I always hate when a game gets to the point where it just becomes monotonous. However, this is a game that I highly enjoy because I take small little segment breaks as I go about it. But again, for you guys, this is like, if you're watching this all in one take, or if you're watching it as it comes out each week, or almost each week now, then it's gonna seem like, oh wow, so much work got done in so little time. But for me, it was like I say several hours, but what you guys are seeing is only an hour of some of the behind the scenes work that I've been working on versus the other work that I do between the episodes. I try not to do too much between the episodes, just because I don't want it to be like, okay, we're gonna start doing a thing, and then the next episode it's, wow, look at all the stuff we did between the episodes. And by all the stuff, I finished everything, and so now there's nothing to do. Um, I try to kind of strike a balance between those. I do think I am gonna get all the demolition done though between today's episode and then the next episode that comes out, which I don't know when that's gonna come out, probably next week, Tuesday or Wednesday. I don't know, I haven't recorded it yet. It will probably get recorded Sunday or Monday. Fingers crossed. Um, Anybody who hasn't become privy to certain information, I'm currently on summer, which on one hand you would think I'd get really good at uploading and recording things, but not having the schedule of school has made me not as studious. I'm trying to think of big vocabulary words in making sure things get uploaded and recorded on time. My goal right now is to at least have 4 videos a week. That sometimes is getting hit, or it's getting hit pretty much almost every week, but there are some weeks where it's technically close onto that. But yeah, so there right now is no regular uploading schedule, as you guys could probably tell. And I do use Dyson Sphere Program as my TED Talk slash weekly update of forms. I don't know. I might end up making a weekly update video of sorts where I just kind of talk about things going on. If you guys want to see something like that, where I just kind of go on and talk about different things, what's going on with the channel, what's going on with me, what's going on just behind the scenes in general, definitely let me know and we can make that happen. Gameplay wise, I'm not really sure what I would do. Probably just throw some gameplay of something, whether it's this or another game that's interesting. There's definitely plenty of things I play, so I might do that. I could just rotate out whatever I'm playing that week in the background and then go from there. Definitely, if you guys have any ideas for any series or anything, let me know down below. Or if you guys have any ideas for games that you want to see me play, whether it's a series or just even a let's try, where we take first looks at games, or games that I've played before and wanted to share with you guys. But with that, I think that's where we're going to call it, because the rest of what I have recorded today is me just standing here while I was mathing things out for probably a good 40 minutes. Yeah, I was incredibly tired at the time of recording this. I had just worked in probably 100-degree weather for about 5 or 6 hours, and I had done that for probably 3 days. So, you don't recommend. It gets very tiring. So yeah, I think that's where we're going to call it. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you guys did, you guys know what to do. Smash the like button if you haven't already. Consider subscribing as it helps out the channel. And if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, or even if you just want to say hi, that works too. Other than that, I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a good one. Peace out.